How many people have you killed, Lieutenant? The question cuts through the briefing room like a blade. Lieutenant Kara Vance stands motionless while 9 senior officers stare her down, waiting for her to crumble. The Air Force colonel leans forward, his voice dripping with contempt. Your record shows combat ribbons but 0 mission reports, 18 months classified with nothing documented. You're either lying about your service or hiding gross incompetence. The room holds its breath. When Kara finally speaks, her answer won't just shock them. It will expose a black operations program the Pentagon swore never existed. Before we continue, if stories of quiet dignity and unsung heroes resonate with you, tell me where you're watching from. This story of Kara Vance reminds us that true courage is often silent, and the greatest warriors are the ones no one is allowed to remember. I read every comment. The room sits 3 floors below ground level at Joint Base Andrews. Concrete walls painted institutional beige absorb sound like a tomb. A single rectangular table dominates the center, surrounded by 9 chairs arranged in a semicircle. Overhead, fluorescent tubes flicker intermittently, casting unstable shadows across stacks of manila folders stamped with red security classifications. Kara stands at the far end of the table. Her dress blues show no wrinkles. Her hair pulls back in a regulation bun. Her hands rest at her sides, neither clasped nor fidgeting. She breathes slowly through her nose, counting each inhale to 4, each exhale to 6. A technique learned in survival training. Controlling the body controls the mind. Colonel Vincent Marsh sits center among the panel. 53 years old, square-jawed with gray temples and eyes like frozen steel. 2 stars gleam on his shoulders. 30 years of service line his chest in colored ribbons. He commands this review board with the same authority he once commanded fighter wings over hostile territory. To his left sits a woman in civilian clothes. Dark suit, Department of Defense credentials clipped to her lapel. She takes notes on a tablet, her stylus moving in quick, precise strokes. Her expression reveals nothing. To Marsh's right, a Navy captain shifts in his seat. He glances between the folder in front of him and Kara's face, searching for something that makes sense. The other 6 officers spread across the remaining chairs show varying degrees of interest, skepticism, and bureaucratic fatigue. Marsh opens Kara's personnel file. The pages turn slowly, each one another layer of contradiction. Deployment to undisclosed location, duration classified, training certification for advanced combat systems, details redacted. Commendation for extraordinary valor. Citation unavailable for review. He closes the folder with a sound like a judge's gavel. Lieutenant Vance, you graduated top 5% from the Air Force Academy. Your initial evaluations were exemplary. You completed specialized training in electronic warfare and tactical operations. He pauses. Then you disappeared into classified assignments for 18 months. Now you're back with a jacket that tells us absolutely nothing. Kara's jaw tightens fractionally. Her eyes remain fixed on a point just above Marsh's left shoulder. My assignments required security protocols beyond standard documentation, sir. Convenient. Marsh leans back in his chair. We have a term for officers who hide behind classifications, ghosts. Operatives who claim expertise but provide 0 evidence, who collect medals for missions that may or may not have happened. The woman in the suit stops writing. The Navy captain shifts again, uncomfortable. One of the junior officers in the back row crosses his arms, his expression hardening into judgment. Kara says nothing. Her breathing remains controlled. 4 counts in, 6 counts out. Marsh stands, pacing now along the length of the table. You were attached to Special Operations Command. Fine. Many officers serve in SOCOM, but they file reports. They document their actions within classified channels. Your record is a void. He stops directly in front of her, close enough that she can smell the coffee on his breath. I've reviewed hundreds of personnel files in my career, Lieutenant. I've seen incompetence masked as discretion. I've seen officers who coast on reputation while contributing nothing of substance. His voice drops lower, colder. What I'm seeing here looks exactly like that. Around the table, several officers nod. One makes a note in her folder. The civilian woman watches Kara's face, searching for a reaction. Kara's fingers curl slightly at her sides. Not fists, just tension bleeding through muscle control. Her lips pressed together for half a second before relaxing. Micro-expressions she can't fully suppress. Marsh returns to his seat. Let me be direct, Lieutenant. This board exists to determine whether you should remain in active service or be discharged for conduct inconsistent with Air Force standards. Right now, the evidence suggests the latter. He opens the folder again, flipping to a specific page. 3 officers have filed complaints questioning your operational credibility. 2 supervisors have expressed concerns about your refusal to provide mission context, and your current commander has requested reassignment based on, and I quote, inability to verify claimed expertise. The words land like hammer strikes, calculated, deliberate, designed to dismantle her credibility piece by piece. Kara meets his eyes for the first time. May I ask a question, sir? Marsh raises an eyebrow. Proceed. Have any of those officers held cosmic top-secret clearance? Silence. The kind that feels like air pressure changing before a storm. Marsh's expression hardens. That's not relevant to this review. With respect, sir, it's the only thing that's relevant. The Navy captain leans forward. Lieutenant, are you claiming your service requires security clearance beyond this board's access level? Kara doesn't answer immediately. She knows what happens next if she continues. Once certain words are spoken, there's no taking them back. Careers end, secrets surface, lives change. She takes one more controlled breath, 4 in, 6 out. Then she speaks. I'm claiming that asking me to justify my record without appropriate clearance is like asking a surgeon to explain an operation to someone who's never seen a scalpel. Marsh's face flushes red. That's insubordination, Lieutenant. That's fact, sir. The room erupts in low murmurs. The civilian woman stops writing entirely, her stylus frozen mid-stroke. One of the colonels in the back row stands halfway, then sits back down, uncertain. Marsh slams his palm on the table. The sound cracks through the room like a gunshot. Enough. You want to hide behind classifications? Fine. But I will not allow this board to be disrespected by an officer who refuses accountability. He leans forward, his voice venomous now. So let me ask you a simple question that doesn't require clearance. A question that should be easy for someone with your supposed combat experience. He pauses, letting the moment build. Every eye in the room locks onto Kara. How many people have you killed, Lieutenant? The question hangs in the air like smoke after an explosion. No one moves, no one speaks. The fluorescent lights buzz overhead, suddenly too loud in the suffocating silence. Kara's hands remain at her sides. Her posture doesn't change, but something shifts behind her eyes. A flash of something dark and distant, like looking into a well with no bottom. Marsh waits. He's asked this question before, to other officers in other hearings. It's a trap disguised as inquiry. Answer too quickly, and you seem eager to boast about killing. Answer too high, and you seem like a liar. Answer too low, and your combat credibility evaporates. Refuse to answer, and you look like a fraud. There's no right response. That's the point. The Navy captain shifts in his chair, uncomfortable with the direction this has taken. The woman in the suit resumes writing, her stylus moving faster now. One of the colonels in the back row leans over and whispers something to the officer beside him. Kara's throat moves as she swallows once. Her fingers curl tighter, knuckles paling. She doesn't look at Marsh. She stares past him, through him, at something only she can see. Sir, that information falls under operational security protocols. Marsh laughs. It's a short, sharp sound devoid of humor. Operational security, of course. He turns to address the panel. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we have our answer. When pressed for concrete evidence of her claimed service, Lieutenant Vance defaults to bureaucratic evasion. He walks back to his seat slowly, letting each step echo against the concrete floor. Let me tell you what I think happened. I think Lieutenant Vance received a plum assignment to a special operations unit. I think she sat in comfortable offices while real operators conducted missions. I think she filed paperwork and attended briefings and collected ribbons for proximity to danger rather than participation in it. The civilian woman stops writing. She looks up at Kara with an expression that's impossible to read. Curiosity mixed with something sharper. Marsh continues, his voice rising with righteous certainty. And now, faced with accountability, she hides behind the very classifications designed to protect legitimate covert operations. It's a disgrace to everyone who's actually bled for this country. Around the table, heads nod. The bureaucratic machine has rendered its judgment. The outcome feels inevitable now, predetermined by assumptions and incomplete information. Kara's jaw clenches. A vein pulses at her temple. Her breathing accelerates slightly. 5 counts in, 5 counts out. The control is slipping. One of the colonels speaks up, his voice careful. "Colonel Marsh, perhaps we should request clarification from SOCOM regarding Lieutenant Vance's actual duties during her classified assignments." Marsh waves the suggestion away. SOCOM won't provide anything beyond what's already in her jacket. That's how these things work. Officers wrap themselves in secrecy and expect us to accept their word as gospel. He fixes Kara with a look of pure disdain. "Well, Lieutenant, your word isn't enough. Not in this room. Not without evidence." The woman in the suit closes her tablet. She reaches into her briefcase and pulls out a phone, typing something quickly. Then she sets the phone face down on the table and returns her attention to Kara. Marsh pulls a document from the folder. "According to your training records, you completed a 4-week course in advanced interrogation resistance. Why would an officer primarily assigned to electronic warfare need training in resisting enemy interrogation?" Kara doesn't answer. "You also completed specialized certification in foreign weapon systems, specifically Russian and Chinese small arms. Again, why would a desk officer need that training?" Still nothing. "And here's my favorite." Marsh reads from the document. "You received combat medical training typically reserved for Special Forces medics. Trauma response, field surgery, hemorrhage control." He looks up. "That's not electronic warfare, Lieutenant. That's direct action operator training." The Navy captain leans forward, interest sharpening in his eyes. "Colonel, those certifications suggest Lieutenant Vance was being prepared for something significantly beyond standard Air Force duties." Marsh ignores him. "Or they suggest someone checking boxes to build a resume. Training courses don't equal operational experience. Any officer can attend schools. What matters is what you do after graduation." He stands again, closing the distance between himself and Kara. "So, I'll ask you one more time, Lieutenant. And I want a straight answer. No classifications, no protocols, just truth." His voice drops to barely above a whisper. "During your 18 months in special operations, did you personally engage enemy combatants in direct combat?" Kara's eyes finally move. They lock onto Marsh's face. For 3 seconds, the room disappears. There's only the two of them. The colonel who thinks he knows everything, and the lieutenant who knows things that would shatter his certainty. "Yes." The word falls like a stone into still water. Marsh blinks. "Yes? Yes, sir. I engaged enemy combatants in direct combat." "How many engagements?" Kara's hands relax slightly. Her breathing steadies. When she speaks again, her voice carries no emotion, no pride, no shame. Just flat, mechanical precision. 7 separate operations across 4 countries over 14 months. The room goes completely still. Even the fluorescent lights seem to stop buzzing. The civilian woman picks up her phone and stares at the screen, her expression changing from neutral to something like alarm. Marsh recovers quickly. 7 operations. And you expect us to believe that in these 7 operations you were the primary operator? I was one of multiple operators, sir. How many others? That information is classified. Marsh's patience finally breaks. His voice rises to a shout that echoes off the concrete walls. Everything with you is classified. Your missions are classified. Your team is classified. Your actual duties are classified. At some point, Lieutenant, you need to provide something, anything, that proves you're not just a well-trained liar. The door at the back of the room opens. No one noticed someone knocking. A young airman steps inside, walks quickly to the woman in the suit and whispers something in her ear. Her eyes widen. She looks at Kara, then at Marsh, then back at her phone. She stands abruptly. "Colonel Marsh, I need to speak with you. Now, outside." Marsh turns toward her, irritation flashing across his face. "Ms. Chen, we're in the middle of—" "Now, Colonel." Her voice carries an authority that wasn't there before. It's not a request. The room clears in stages. First, the woman, Ms. Chen, and Colonel Marsh disappear through the door, their voices immediately dropping to urgent whispers in the hallway. Then 3 of the junior officers stand and file out, confusion evident on their faces. The Navy captain remains seated, studying Kara with renewed interest. 2 colonels stay as well, exchanging glances but saying nothing. Kara doesn't move. Her hands return to her sides. Her breathing resets to the controlled rhythm. 4 in, 6 out. She stares at the far wall, at a spot where the paint has cracked slightly, revealing gray concrete underneath. Through the small window in the door, Marsh's silhouette gestures sharply. Ms. Chen holds her phone up, showing him something on the screen. His posture changes. The aggressive confidence drains away, replaced by something that looks like shock or fear. The Navy captain clears his throat. "Lieutenant Vance, may I ask you something off the record?" Kara's eyes shift toward him, but she doesn't speak. He continues anyway. "I served with DevGru for 6 years before my current assignment. I know what it looks like when someone has seen real combat. The way you hold yourself, the way you breathe, the micro-responses to stress stimuli." He pauses. "You're not faking this." One of the colonels shoots him a warning look. "Captain, that's inappropriate speculation during a formal review." The captain ignores her. "Those training certifications Colonel Marsh mentioned, interrogation resistance, foreign weapons, combat medicine, that's not standard Air Force curriculum. That's preparation for operations where capture means death and extraction isn't guaranteed." Kara's jaw tightens. She says nothing. Outside, Marsh's voice rises loud enough to filter through the door. "That's impossible. There's no record of any operation matching that description." Ms. Chen responds with something too quiet to hear. Marsh's response comes back sharp and clear. "I don't care what SOCOM says. This board has authority to—" Chen cuts him off mid-sentence. The door opens. Marsh walks back inside. His face has gone pale. The arrogance has evaporated, replaced by something that looks like a man who just stepped on a landmine and is waiting for the explosion. Ms. Chen follows him, her expression unreadable. She doesn't return to her seat. Instead, she walks directly to Kara and extends her hand. "Lieutenant Vance, I apologize for the nature of this proceeding. I've just received confirmation from the Office of the Secretary of Defense that your service record requires special handling protocols that weren't properly communicated to this board." Kara shakes her hand once briefly. "Ma'am." Chen turns to address the remaining officers. "Gentlemen, this review is suspended pending verification of security clearances. Lieutenant Vance's operational history involves programs that require cosmic top-secret compartmented access. None of you—" She glances at Marsh, including Colonel Marsh, "hold the necessary clearance to review the details of her service." The Navy captain sits back in his chair, nodding slowly as if pieces of a puzzle just clicked into place. One of the colonels starts to object, then thinks better of it and closes her mouth. Marsh finds his voice. It's smaller now, uncertain. "Ms. Chen, I was briefed that this was a standard administrative review. If Lieutenant Vance's service was that sensitive, why wasn't this board properly constituted from the beginning?" "That's an excellent question, Colonel." Chen's voice carries an edge like sharpened steel. "One I'll be asking your commanding officer shortly. For now, this hearing is over." She picks up her tablet and walks toward the door, pausing only to look back at Kara. "Lieutenant, you're free to return to your quarters. Someone from my office will contact you within 24 hours regarding your next assignment." Kara nods. "Yes, ma'am." The room empties quickly. Officers gather their materials and file out in uncomfortable silence. Only the Navy captain lingers briefly near the door. He catches Kara's eye and gives a single respectful nod. The kind one warrior gives another across the distance of shared understanding. Then he's gone. The door closes. Kara stands alone in the empty briefing room. She walks to the table and picks up the folder that contains her official record. Pages of redactions, dates blacked out, mission summaries reduced to single-word classifications, a career rendered invisible by necessity. She sets the folder down carefully, precisely centered on the table. Her hands are steady now. No tremor, no tension, just the muscle memory of someone who learned long ago how to compartmentalize trauma and continue the mission. The overhead lights flicker again. One tube buzzes louder than the others, a high-pitched whine that most people wouldn't notice. But Kara hears it. The same way she hears footsteps approaching before they reach the door. The same way she notices the slight change in air pressure when someone enters a room behind her. Skills that don't come from sitting at a desk. She walks to the door and pauses with her hand on the handle. Through the small window, she can see Marsh standing in the hallway, his back against the wall, his head tilted up toward the ceiling. He looks like a man who just watched his certainty collapse. Ms. Chen stands nearby, talking on her phone. Her voice is too low to make out individual words, but the tone is clear. Reporting to someone with authority far above this basement review board. Kara pushes the door open and steps into the hallway. The overhead lights here are brighter, whiter. After the dimness of the briefing room, they make her eyes water slightly. Marsh straightens when he sees her. His mouth opens as if to speak, then closes. Whatever he was going to say dies unspoken. He looks at her differently now. Not with contempt, but with something closer to recognition. The way someone might look at a weapon they didn't realize was loaded. People see what they want to see. They make assumptions based on age, gender, appearance. They build entire narratives from incomplete information, filling gaps with prejudice disguised as experience. Marsh saw a young female officer with an inconsistent record and assumed incompetence. He never considered the alternative. That inconsistency might be evidence of something so classified. Its very existence contradicts the official narrative of modern warfare. Kara walks past him without speaking. Her boots echo against polished floors. Behind her, Chen's voice rises slightly. "Yes, sir. Confirmed. Operation Crimson Veil. The lieutenant was primary operator for Phase 3. Marsh's sharp intake of breath is audible even from 10 feet away. Kara doesn't look back. She pushes through the stairwell door and begins climbing toward ground level. 3 flights up, past security checkpoints and administrative offices, past conference rooms where officers discuss strategies and tactics in the abstract, where combat is theory and death is statistical. She emerges into afternoon sunlight. The air smells like cut grass and jet fuel. F-16s taxi on distant runways, their engines screaming as they prepare for training exercises, normal operations, routine flights, the visible face of military power. Kara walks across the parking lot to her car, a 10-year-old sedan with faded paint and a dent in the rear bumper. Nothing that draws attention. Nothing that suggests the person who drives it has operational training that most Special Forces operators never receive. She sits behind the wheel, but doesn't start the engine. Instead, she pulls out her phone and opens an encrypted messaging app. One new message, received 14 minutes ago while she stood in that basement being accused of fraudulent service. The message contains 3 words. Phase 4 approved. Kara stares at the screen. Her thumb hovers over the keyboard. She types a response. Acknowledged, then deletes it. Types understood and deletes that too. Finally, she just closes the app without responding. They'll know she saw it. That's enough. She starts the engine and drives off base, through security gates where MPs check IDs and wave her through without a second glance. Just another junior officer finishing another day of routine duty. What nobody in that review board understood, what Marsh couldn't comprehend, and what Chen only partially grasped, is that some operations don't end. Some missions continue in the gaps between official acknowledgement. Some warriors never stop fighting just because the paperwork says they're done. Phase 4 doesn't exist in any public record. It won't appear in any briefing. When Kara completes it, there will be no medal ceremony, no commendation, no entry in her service jacket. There will only be the mission, and the knowledge that she did what was necessary while others slept safely, believing the world was simpler than it actually is. 18 months earlier, Kara stood in a different room under different lights, facing different officers who were about to change her life forever. The briefing facility sat 20 miles outside Nellis Air Force Base, hidden behind layers of security protocols that didn't officially exist. No windows, no identifying markers, just a building designated by number rather than name, Facility 19 in internal documents, though even that designation was compartmented. 6 people sat around the conference table, a 2-star general whose name Kara never learned, 2 civilians from an agency that used no acronym, a Navy SEAL commander with the weathered face of someone who'd spent decades in places maps don't acknowledge, a CIA officer who introduced herself only as Rachel. And 1 seat remained empty, reserved for someone who hadn't arrived yet. The general spoke first. "Lieutenant Vance, you're here because your psychological profile, skill assessments, and operational training place you in the top 0.1% of military personnel for a very specific type of mission." He paused. "Before we continue, I need your verbal acknowledgement that everything discussed in this room falls under a classification level that supersedes your current clearance. Disclosure to any person without proper authorization constitutes treason. Do you understand?" Kara's throat felt dry. "Yes, sir." "Say it clearly for the record. I understand that unauthorized disclosure of information from this briefing constitutes treason." The general nodded. One of the civilians activated a recording device on the table. The red light blinked steadily. Rachel leaned forward. "We've spent 6 months monitoring your training performance. Interrogation resistance. You lasted 17 hours against enhanced techniques before giving your first fabricated intelligence. The threshold for passing is 6 hours. Most special operations personnel break at 8. The SEAL commander picked up the thread. Close quarters combat assessment. You neutralized 4 armed opponents in a confined space in 43 seconds with 0 friendly casualties. Average completion time for operators with 5 years experience is 2 minutes 18 seconds. One of the civilians opened a folder. Foreign language proficiency. You're fluent in Mandarin and conversational in Russian and Arabic. Your psychological evaluation shows exceptional stress tolerance, moral flexibility under operational necessity, and, this is the critical factor, the ability to compartmentalize extreme violence without pathological processing. Kara sat motionless. What does that mean in plain language? It means you can kill someone and go to sleep that night without nightmares. The words hung in the air. Not an accusation, not an insult, just a clinical observation of a trait most people would find monstrous but operational necessity requires. The general stood and walked to a wall screen. It lit up, displaying a satellite image of a coastal city Kara didn't immediately recognize. This is Qingdao, China, naval base, home to the People's Liberation Army Navy's North Sea Fleet. The image zoomed in on a specific building. This facility houses advanced cyber warfare operations targeting U.S. military communications infrastructure. He clicked to the next image. 3 weeks ago, we intercepted communications indicating an imminent large-scale attack on our satellite network. If successful, it would blind every carrier group in the Pacific, disable missile defense systems, and leave our forces vulnerable to coordinated strikes across multiple theaters. The SEAL commander continued. We can't respond militarily without triggering open warfare. We can't address it diplomatically because China officially denies the facility's existence, so we're addressing it surgically. Rachel pulled up another image. A man in his 50s, Chinese military uniform, multiple ribbons. General Chen Zhao, Director of Cyber Operations. He's the architect of the attack. Without him, the operation collapses. There's no one else with his specific technical expertise and command authority. The civilians were quiet, letting the implications settle. Kara understood immediately. You want someone to eliminate him. We need someone who can enter a secure facility, identify and neutralize a high-value target, and extract without leaving evidence of American involvement. The general's voice was flat, emotionless. The operation has already been authorized at the highest level. We're not asking for your opinion on its necessity. We're offering you the opportunity to execute it." The empty chair at the table suddenly made sense. It wasn't reserved for someone who hadn't arrived. It was reserved for Kara, if she said yes. "Why me?" Her voice was steady despite her racing heart. "There are special forces operators with more experience." "Because," Rachel said quietly, "this isn't a military operation. It's an intelligence operation conducted by someone with military training. You have deniability built into your profile. Young, female, Air Force electronic warfare officer. If something goes wrong, if you're captured, China would never believe the US sent someone like you for an assassination mission. They'd assume you were CIA or acting alone." The SEAL commander added, "Plus, you're the only candidate who tested positive for every required skill while maintaining emotional stability markers. This mission requires someone who can function at the intersection of warrior and ghost." Kara looked at each face around the table. They weren't asking her to defend freedom in some abstract sense. They were asking her to become something most people would call a murderer, to cross a line drawn by laws and ethics and international conventions. But she also understood the mathematics. One man's death to prevent thousands. One illegal operation to preserve strategic stability. The trolley problem taken out of philosophy classrooms and dropped into the real world where choices have consequences measured in body counts. If I say no, you return to your unit. This conversation never happened. No repercussions. No judgment. The general's expression didn't change. "But understand, if you decline, we move to our second choice. The mission proceeds with or without you. So your decision isn't whether the operation happens, it's whether you're the one who executes it." Kara's hands rested flat on the table. She studied her own knuckles, the fine scars across her fingers from training accidents, the calluses from weapons handling, hands that had never killed anyone outside of computer simulations and training scenarios. She thought about her father, a bomber pilot who'd flown 97 missions during Desert Storm. He'd dropped ordnance on targets he never saw, killed people who existed only as coordinates on a screen. War sanitized through distance and technology. This would be different. Personal. Intimate. No cockpit separating her from the human reality of what taking a life actually meant. But maybe that was the point. Maybe someone should bear the full weight of these decisions, rather than hiding behind drones and standoff munitions. "I need to know one thing." She looked up, meeting the general's eyes. "After it's done, if I complete the mission, will I be the person who did it? Or will I be someone who follows orders in service of something bigger than individual conscience?" Rachel answered before the general could. "You'll be exactly what you choose to be, Lieutenant. We're offering you a mission, not an identity. How you process what comes next is entirely up to you." Kara nodded slowly. She'd read enough classified history to know how this worked. Moral ambiguity outsourced to individuals, while leadership maintains plausible deniability. The system's self-protection mechanism, pushing the burden of ethical consequences downward while keeping strategic objectives pristine at the top. But someone had to do it. Someone always did. The question was whether that someone would be her or another operator sitting in another room being offered the same terrible choice. "When do I leave?" The general's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes shifted. Respect, maybe, or just acknowledgement of a decision made. 72 hours. You'll receive a full operational briefing tomorrow. From this moment forward, you're detached from your current unit under training protocols. Your commander will be told you're attending specialized schools. Your family will receive standard deployment notifications. Everything else is need to know, and right now you don't need to know anything except this. Once you begin operational preparation, there's no backing out. Understood. Rachel stood and extended her hand. "Welcome to Crimson Vale, Lieutenant." Kara shook it. The hand felt warm, human, normal. Nothing about it suggested what came next. 6 weeks of training that rewrote everything she thought she knew about violence, about herself, about the distance between the person she was and the person necessary to complete the mission. By the time she stood on Chinese soil 3 months later, Her hands had memorized the weight of weapons not found in any Air Force armory. Her mind had absorbed tactical protocols that didn't exist in any manual. Her psychological profile had shifted in ways the original evaluation never anticipated. Adaptations necessary for survival in the space between law and necessity. Some warriors earn their scars in battle. Others earn them in the silent spaces where nations preserve themselves through actions they can never acknowledge. Kara earned hers in both. Back in the present, Kara sits in her quarters. A small room in the junior officers' barracks that could belong to anyone. Standard issue furniture. Neutral walls. A single window overlooking the parking lot. Nothing personal except a photograph on the desk. Her father in flight gear standing in front of a B-52, grinning at the camera with the easy confidence of someone who believed in clear enemies and righteous missions. She wonders what he would think of her now. Whether he'd understand the gray spaces she operates in, or whether his certainty about right and wrong would crumble under the weight of her particular service. Her phone buzzes, a text from an unknown number. Car outside, 5 minutes. She doesn't question it, doesn't pack. Just grabs her jacket and walks out the door. The black sedan idles near the building entrance. Ms. Chen sits in the back seat. She opens the door as Kara approaches. Get in. They drive in silence through the base, past administrative buildings and hangars, past the flight line where jets scream into twilight sky. The sedan clears security gates and continues into civilian territory, merging onto highways that lead away from everything marked on official maps. After 20 minutes, they turn onto a private road. Trees close in on both sides. The pavement transitions to gravel. Ahead, a compound emerges. 3 buildings arranged around a central courtyard, surrounded by fencing that looks decorative but serves purposes most visitors never recognize. Chen leads Kara to the largest building. Inside, past security checkpoints and ID verification, into a conference room that feels familiar. Same layout as Facility 19. Same absence of windows. Same weight of secrecy pressing down like atmospheric pressure. 6 people wait. Different faces than before, but similar types. Military, intelligence, civilian oversight. And at the head of the table, a 3-star general whose name Kara recognizes from news coverage. General Sarah Wyatt, head of Air Force Special Operations Command. Wyatt gestures to an empty chair. Lieutenant Vance. Thank you for coming. Did I have a choice, ma'am? A hint of a smile. Not really, but I appreciate the courtesy of not making us ask twice. She opens a folder. I've reviewed the transcript from this morning's disaster. Colonel Marsh exceeded his authority and demonstrated spectacular incompetence. He's being reassigned to a position where his inability to recognize classified operations when they're sitting directly in front of him can cause less damage. One of the civilians speaks up. Lieutenant, we owe you an apology. Your assignment to that review board was a bureaucratic error. Someone in personnel didn't properly flag your jacket for special handling. The result was a public interrogation about matters that should never have been discussed outside of compartmented spaces. Kara says nothing. Apologies from people like this always come with conditions. Wyatt continues. However, your conduct during the hearing was exemplary. You maintained operational security under significant pressure. You didn't break protocol even when doing so might have prevented humiliation. That kind of discipline is exactly why you were selected for Crimson Veil. She pauses, studying Kara's face. I'm told Marsh asked about your kill count. You didn't answer. Why? Because the number isn't relevant, ma'am. The missions were necessary. The outcomes were successful. Whether it was 1 target or 100 doesn't change those facts. But Marsh made it relevant by making it the centerpiece of his accusation. Kara's jaw tightens. With respect, General, if I'd answered him accurately, this conversation would be happening in a very different context. Possibly a criminal context. Chen interjects. She's right. Crimson Veil involved 47 confirmed eliminations across 7 operations over 14 months. If Lieutenant Vance had stated that number in an unclassified setting in front of 9 officers without proper clearance, we'd be facing an intelligence disaster. The room goes quiet. Even the people who presumably know about Crimson Veil react to the number. 47. Not casualties of war, not collateral damage, targeted eliminations, assassinations by any honest definition. One of the military officers leans forward. Lieutenant, the official record shows you as an electronic warfare specialist. How does someone with that designation end up conducting direct action operations? I was trained for both, sir. My public designation provided cover for operational deployment. If I'd been identified as special operations from the beginning, it would have compromised mission security. Wyatt nods. Crimson Veil required operators who could blend into conventional military structures while executing tasks that special forces couldn't risk. Lieutenant Vance spent 14 months as a ghost. Officially, an Air Force officer attending routine assignments, actually conducting operations across 4 countries that prevented 3 major international incidents. She taps the folder. The first operation neutralized cyber attack infrastructure in Qingdao. The second interdicted weapons shipments in the Strait of Hormuz. The third extracted a compromised intelligence asset from Pyongyang. Each mission required someone who could operate independently, make split-second decisions, and complete objectives without external support. One of the civilians asks, "What happened in the 4th operation?" Kara's expression hardens. "I'd prefer not to discuss specifics, ma'am." This room is cleared for Crimson Veil details. I understand. But some operations are better left as statistical outcomes rather than narrative descriptions. A long silence. Wyatt exchanges glances with Chen, some unspoken communication passing between them. Finally, Wyatt nods. Fair enough. What matters is that all 7 operations succeeded. 0 friendly casualties, 0 compromised assets, 0 intelligence breaches. That's a perfect record over 14 months of continuous high-risk deployment. She closes the folder. Which brings us to why you're here. Crimson Veil officially concluded 6 months ago. You were rotated back to conventional duty with instructions to maintain cover and await further assignment. But geopolitical circumstances have evolved. New threats have emerged. And we need operators with your specific skill set. Kara feels something cold settle in her stomach. Phase 4. Wyatt's eyebrows rise slightly. You've been briefed? I received a message. 3 words. Phase 4 approved. Then you know what's coming. I know there's another operation, I don't know the details. Chen pulls up a display on the wall screen. Satellite imagery, coastal terrain, a military installation surrounded by security perimeter. This is Severomorsk, Russia, home to the Northern Fleet, 2 months ago. Intelligence intercepted communications suggesting a coordinated effort to compromise our Arctic early warning systems. If successful, Russia could deploy ballistic missile submarines into positions where our response time would be measured in minutes rather than hours. Another image. A man in Russian naval uniform, younger than General Chen but with the same intensity in his eyes. Admiral Viktor Petrov, former submarine commander, now director of Arctic Strategic Operations. He's architected the entire infiltration program. Without him, the operation collapses. Kara stares at the screen. She knows what comes next. The same mathematics as before. 1 elimination to prevent strategic catastrophe. 1 illegal operation to maintain global stability. The trolley problem in a different language with higher stakes. When? Wyatt's expression doesn't change. Deployment in 6 weeks. Training begins tomorrow. This operation has additional complications. Tighter security, hostile climate, limited extraction options. Success probability is estimated at 65%. And if I say no, then we move to our second choice. But Lieutenant, Wyatt leans forward, you're our first choice for a reason. This mission requires someone with proven capability under impossible circumstances. Someone who understands that some services can never be acknowledged, but must be performed anyway. Kara looks around the table. 6 faces watching her with expressions ranging from anticipation to concern. People who will never stand in front of a review board and defend these decisions. People who will retire with full honors while operators like her vanish into classified footnotes. But someone has to do it. Someone always does. I'll need complete operational details before committing. Of course. Full briefing tomorrow at 0800. Wyatt stands, extending her hand. Thank you, Lieutenant, for your service, for your sacrifice, and for understanding that some debts can never be repaid, only honored in silence. Kara shakes her hand. The grip is firm, professional. Nothing about it acknowledges the moral weight being transferred from command levels to individual conscience. As she walks out of the building into darkness, Kara thinks about Colonel Marsh, about his certainty that he understood her service, about his shock when that certainty collapsed. People see what they want to see. They build narratives from incomplete information. They judge based on assumptions rather than evidence. But the truth is simpler and more terrible than any assumption. Some warriors fight in shadows where law and necessity collide. Some missions exist in spaces between official acknowledgement. Some prices are paid by individuals while nations sleep safely, never knowing the cost of their security. Kara gets into the sedan. Chen sits beside her in silence as they drive back toward the base. Through the window, streetlights blur into continuous lines of light against darkness. The world outside continues in its comfortable illusions. That warfare has rules, that violence is always justified, that the people who protect them do so within boundaries drawn by ethics and international law. She knows better, has known since the moment she pulled a trigger for the first time and watched a human being stop existing, has known since she learned how to compartmentalize that knowledge and continue functioning. Some lessons are learned in classrooms, others are written in blood that no one else will ever see. 3 weeks pass before Kara sees Colonel Marsh again. It happens by accident, or perhaps by design in the way things happen around people with security clearances that supersede normal military hierarchy. She's walking through the administrative complex at Joint Base Andrews, carrying folders marked with classification stamps that most personnel never see, when she rounds a corner and nearly collides with him. He stops mid-stride. His face cycles through recognition, shock, and something that might be shame. He's in uniform, but the 2 stars are gone, replaced by a single colonel's insignia, a demotion disguised as lateral reassignment. Lieutenant Vance. His voice is quieter than she remembers, stripped of the commanding authority he wielded in that basement review board. Colonel Marsh. They stand in the corridor while other officers flow around them like water around stones. An awkward silence stretches until Marsh breaks it. I owe you an apology. What happened in that hearing? He stops, struggling with words. I made assumptions, drew conclusions from incomplete information, accused you of things that were... He trails off. Kara's expression doesn't change. You did your job as you understood it, sir. No, I did my job poorly. He glances around, then lowers his voice. I've been briefed on Crimson Veil, what you actually did during those 18 months. And He stops again, jaw working. I called you a fraud in front of 9 officers, suggested your combat experience was fabricated, asked about your kill count like it was some kind of gotcha question. You asked a question. I didn't answer. That's how these things work. But you knew. You sat there while I accused you of hiding behind classifications, and you knew that if you told the truth, you'd be violating protocols that exist for reasons I didn't understand. Kara shifts the folders in her arms. Colonel, with respect, this conversation isn't productive. You operated within your authority based on the information available to you. The system failed by putting me in front of a review board without proper security measures. That's not your fault. Marsh shakes his head. I'm 53 years old, 30 years of service. I thought I understood how special operations worked. I thought I could recognize decorated war heroes versus people gaming the system. His voice drops even lower. Then I find out you've conducted more successful direct action operations in 14 months than most special forces operators complete in a career. And I publicly humiliated you because your jacket didn't have the paperwork I expected. A captain walks past, glancing curiously at them. Marsh waits until he's out of earshot before continuing. They told me you saved thousands of American lives, that you prevented 3 international incidents that would have escalated into open warfare. And you did it alone, without support, in environments where capture meant torture and execution. He pauses. I've flown combat missions. I've been shot at. But I always had a cockpit between me and the enemy. What you did... He stops, unable to finish. Kara meets his eyes. Colonel, you're searching for a narrative that makes sense of this. There isn't one. I received orders. I executed them. Some missions are acknowledged and some aren't. That's the nature of modern warfare. But it's not fair. You should be decorated, promoted, recognized for... No. Her voice hardens. I should be exactly where I am. Invisible. The moment people know what I've done, I become useless for future operations. The moment my face is attached to those missions, I become a target. Anonymity is my best protection. Marsh nods slowly, finally understanding. So you'll just continue? Take on more missions that no one will ever know about? If that's what's required. And when you're done, when you've given everything and there's nothing left to give? Kara's expression doesn't change, but something flickers behind her eyes. Acknowledgement of a question she's asked herself countless times. Then someone else will take my place. There's always someone else. They stand in silence for a few more seconds. Around them, the base continues its routine operations. Meetings, briefings, training exercises, the visible machinery of military power. Finally, Marsh speaks again. For what it's worth, Lieutenant, you have my respect, complete and absolute. Thank you, sir, but I don't need respect. I need the system to function correctly, so the next operator doesn't end up in front of a review board being asked questions they legally can't answer. I'll make sure that doesn't happen again. Good. She moves past him, continuing down the corridor. After a few steps, Marsh calls out, "Lieutenant?" She stops, turns slightly. I know you can't talk about Phase 4, but whatever it is, whatever they're asking you to do. He pauses, searching for the right words. Come back. When it's done, come back. Kara nods once. Then she turns and walks away, her boots echoing against polished floors. Marsh watches her until she disappears around a corner. Then he stands there for a long moment, staring at the empty corridor, trying to reconcile the young lieutenant he publicly shamed with the reality of what she actually is. Not a bureaucrat hiding behind classifications, but a weapon aimed at threats most people never know exist. He thinks about the review board, about his certainty, about how easy it is to judge when you don't have access to complete information. Some warriors fight in public, their actions broadcast and celebrated. Others fight in shadows, their sacrifices known only to the handful of people who authorize the missions. Marsh spent 30 years believing he understood the difference between the two. Now he knows better. Now he understands that the quietest voices in the room might be the ones that saved countless lives, while everyone else slept safely in their assumptions. He straightens his uniform and continues down the corridor, carrying the weight of a lesson learned too late to prevent harm, but hopefully soon enough to prevent future mistakes. Behind classified walls, in briefing rooms that don't officially exist, Kara prepares for Phase 4. She studies satellite imagery, memorizes tactical protocols, rehearses scenarios where every variable is accounted for except the one that always matters most, whether she'll survive to complete the mission. But survival is secondary. It always has been. What matters is the objective, the mission. The invisible work that prevents catastrophes most people never know were possible. Some debts can never be repaid. Some services can never be acknowledged. Some warriors simply do what's necessary and then fade back into the shadows, carrying the weight of their actions in silence. Kara understands this, has internalized it, has become it. And when Phase 4 begins, she'll do what she's always done. Execute the mission, survive if possible, and trust that somewhere, someone understands the cost of security purchased through actions that can never be spoken aloud. 6 months later, Kara sits in a coffee shop 3 blocks from the Pentagon. It's early morning. The place smells like espresso and fresh pastries. Civilians in business attire check their phones while waiting for orders. A mother nurses her baby in the corner booth. A teenager with headphones does homework at the counter. Normal life, untouched by classified operations and strategic calculations. Kara wears jeans and a simple jacket. Her hair hangs loose around her shoulders. Nothing about her appearance suggests military service. She could be a graduate student, a junior attorney, a graphic designer. Just another young woman grabbing coffee before work. Her phone buzzes. A text from Chen. Phase 4 successful. Asset extracted. 0 casualties. Well done. She deletes the message and sets the phone face down on the table. Across from her, an elderly man reads a newspaper. The headline discusses tensions with Russia, diplomatic negotiations, strategic concerns. The article never mentions Severomorsk, never mentions Admiral Petrov, never mentions the operation that quietly eliminated a threat before it could escalate into something that would have made headlines for very different reasons. That's how it works. The visible world continues, unaware of the invisible mechanisms that preserve it. People debate policy and strategy without knowing that decisions have already been made, actions already taken, consequences already managed. Kara sips her coffee. It's too hot. Burns her tongue slightly. A mundane discomfort that somehow feels more real than anything she experienced during Phase 4. Civilian life has a texture that operational life lacks. Small irritations, minor pleasures, the ordinary rhythm of existence uninterrupted by violence. She thinks about Marsh, about his shock when he learned the truth, about his apology delivered in a corridor where anyone might have overheard. He meant well, but he still didn't understand. Not really. Understanding requires living it, and most people never will. The mother in the corner booth laughs at something her baby does. The sound carries across the coffee shop, light and genuine. That baby will grow up in a world where threats are managed before they become visible, where warriors like Kara operate in shadows so that children can laugh in sunlight. It's not a fair exchange. It's not meant to be. Fairness is a concept for peacetime. What Kara does exists beyond fairness, in the space where necessity overrides ethics, and someone has to make choices that everyone else can afford to condemn. Her phone buzzes again. Another message, this one from an unknown number. Next briefing scheduled. Stand by for details. She doesn't delete this one immediately, just stares at the screen, at the words that mean her brief return to normalcy is already ending. There's always another mission, another threat, another target that needs neutralizing. The coffee shop continues around her. People laugh, talk, complain about traffic and weather. The ordinary concerns of people who are protected by warriors they'll never meet. Kara finishes her coffee, leaves cash on the table, and walks out into morning sunlight. The city stretches around her, monuments to democracy, to freedom, to ideals that require constant defense. She blends into the crowd, just another face among thousands, invisible, anonymous, exactly where she needs to be. Some heroes wear uniforms and receive medals. Others wear shadows and carry secrets. The work continues regardless of recognition, driven by people who understand that true service demands silence. The people who protect us most are often the ones we never see. The missions that save lives are the ones that never make the news. And sometimes the quietest voice in the room is the one that changed everything. To everyone who shared where you're watching from, thank you for recognizing those who serve in silence. Subscribe for more stories of unsung American heroes who prove that true greatness needs no announcement. See you in the next one.